by the early 90s, from about 90 to 95, these statistics were true of what we were seeing happen on the universities. We were on 55 campuses around the country. We had 60 full-time and part-time staff. Our entire budget across each state and national and the short-term mission team sending program that we had was about $1 million per annum. That had been raised from students, from some graduates, from some churches, and also fees for mission trips and so on. These full-time and part-time staff, of that 60, I don't actually have a breakdown on how many were full-time and how many were part-time, but these were all ones who felt such a passion and calling to the universities that they had gone out and raised missionary-style support. So, and we actually had a process in place that we would mentor them through as to how to list those that they would approach. We had, the documents together. They'd put together a portfolio. They'd ring family and friends and pastors of churches, and we had a budget set that if they didn't reach that budget, they could only work a certain number of hours on the campus and then had to work part-time. If they reached a certain budget, they could then go full-time and so on. So we tried to care for them, but there was an incredible sense of sacrifice and commitment to the cause of seeing something powerful for God on the campuses. I still remember one staff member. We used to, once a week in Sydney, we'd hold for the staff, not necessarily the student leaders, but once a week we'd hold a staff meeting for all the Students for Christ staff. And one girl who was on part-time staff, this is a sense of sacrifice, in order to get to the staff meeting, had run out of money. She got off the train, but had run out of money to catch the bus. And so she got a stamp that she had in her purse. Bus trips cost a lot less in those days. Had a stamp in her purse, or a book of stamps or something like that. Went to one of the vendors at the train station and convinced them to buy the book of stamps off her so that she would have the money to get to the staff meeting. I remember in my initial years of pioneering Students for Christ in New South Wales, I was running part-time jobs. I was a teacher in one of the prep schools there for a couple of years. Then when I needed more flexibility of time, I went out and was doing market research for it used to be called McNair Anderson, which was the company that did the TV ratings and so on. You got the surveys on the Friday night. By 6 p.m. on Sunday, you had to have 12 surveys done for it to be official for the ratings. I had my area, it would literally just go door to door, knocking. I would have bruised knuckles at the end of every weekend, just trying to get enough money to part-time support myself as we planted this campus ministry. And I still remember the day that after I'd got my 12th, my knuckles hurting, I'd caught the bus home, was walking home, and I just sat in the gutter halfway home, just exhausted, and just pleaded with God and said, God, there's got to be another way. God, because I didn't even have a car at the time and was having to catch public transport to get across Sydney to all different universities, and we started to have it going down in Canberra, which is an overnight. So I was catching coach down overnight to get the group going down there and coach back the next day. And I was studying at Bible college at the same time, and they'd given me special permission to get the lectures on tape. You probably don't even know what a Walkman is. It sat on your hip and played a tape of the lectures, and I'd sit on the coach listening to the lectures and so on. And it got too much. It's probably a bit too dramatic to say collapsed into the gutter, but I certainly sat down and I wept. And I said, God, this is too hard. Can I please have a breakthrough with money? And I need a car. A few days later, I went to church And a guy came up to me who knew, I mean, he knew I was in campus ministry and so on, and he was a friend, but I'd said nothing to him of my specific needs. He said, "Warren, do you need a car?" I said, "That'd really help." He said, "I've just got a new car through my work and God's told me to give you mine." Within days of that desperation, out of a sense of call and sacrificial commitment to it, produced miracle after miracle after miracle. And we had 60 people who were doing that adventure. Some had built it up to full-time staff, some kept it as part-time staff, some would staff for 1 year or for 2 years, almost like a gap year period before going into their profession. Others stuck with it for decades. But it was that commitment and that sense of sacrifice that produced the result through those staff. 55 campuses, 60 full-time and part-time staff, 2,000 students involved nationally in any 1 year across those campuses that we were on. Some campus groups were 8, 20, 30. Others were 300. How big was Melbourne and Monash University?
Couple of hundred.
Yeah, couple of hundred. And because that fluctuated from year to year and so on. We assisted church movements in 13 other Asia-Pacific countries to establish national Pentecostal campus ministry. Every Christmas, over 100 Australian students would travel on short-term mission teams for 4 to 5 weeks in groups of 5 to 8 into the various nations of the world to do cross-cultural mission experience. 25% of those who went on one of those short-term mission teams has since then served long-term on the mission field.